Welcome to the Frozen Reaper, a power charge stacking cold assassin build using Reap. This build has turned out to be extremely fun, with great clear and single target damage. Despite not having a ton of life, I still feel pretty tanky, probably because we're annihilating the entire screen. Before we get started, let's go over the cons and pros of the build. First off, this is not a budget build. While you can certainly level up as Reap on a budget and start doing maps, and I was even able to do less than 8 hours to maps in Dawn vs Stream while having to throw gear on the ground and play upside down occasionally, I do feel like your clearing and survivability would suffer in maps without some investment. Around 20 exalts though should do the trick to get you feeling decent. The next con is that it's not a very tanky build, so you're not going to be face tanking serious on this one. For pros, this build has great top end damage against bosses and normal clear. We scale so hard that we can clear tier 16s with just using Curse on hit Wave of Conviction. We also clear out large swaths of enemies at a time and freeze even map bosses if they survive our initial cast. Ultimatums are kind of a breeze since we clear nearly the whole thing with every cast. Reap has a life cost but not a mana cost, so you can easily do no regen maps or even stand inside the Crusader mana suck squares without noticing too much. Lastly, since this version of the build scales a lot of physical damage, we're capable of killing enemies within proximity shields with just our dot damage, which is huge quality of life. And you can easily slap a headhunter on the build without having to make any major changes. I started this build after seeing JungRoan's fire version and wanted to improve it. I tried out scaling pure fizz and even dabbled with the fire version for a bit, but I think cold is the way to go. We're able to go down to Wind Dancer for more survivability and can pick up easy cold conversion on the tree. Combine that with Assassin's elusiveness and we're looking at a lot of dodge and damage avoidance while also freezing most foes before they can even attack us. Also, the cold version protects you against porcupines and has that satisfying shatter sound. And don't worry, we're not missing out on a power charge on the left side of the tree because we just anointed on our amulet. Reap is a physical spell that swipes a bloody scythe across an area, dealing physical damage and leaving behind a physical dot. Whenever you hit an enemy with Reap and don't kill any, you gain a blood charge. Each blood charge increases the cost of Reap by 20% and provides a 15% more damage buff to Reap. By default, you can have a maximum of 5 blood charges, but we're using the hat enchant to raise this to 6. This provides a 90% more damage multiplier against single targets. This is unique because this mechanic allows you to have great clear and single target without having to swap gems. This is even more noticeable with Unleash because we're able to cast multiple Reaps at once. With the support gem, passive tree, and the Redeemer helmet mod, we're able to release 6 Reaps with one cast. Awaken Spell Cascade also allows for us to cover a larger area and have overlapping swipes. One of the things I've noticed is that with the combination of Awaken Spell Cascade and Unleash, we appear to be releasing 3 tightly clustered swipes that are capable of overlapping. This creates a sweet spot where 3 of the Reap areas are overlapping in a straight line. It can take a little bit to get used to placing the sweet spot, but it's pretty apparent when it lands. For our main links, we're using Reap, Awaken Spell Cascade, Awakened Unleash, Awakened Control Destruction, Power Charge on Critical, and Energy Leech. Of course, you can use the non-awakened versions of these support gems, but the awakened versions are much better, especially Spell Cascade. Without Awakened Spell Cascade, your single target damage is going to be much lower, as you won't be able to really get very many, if any, overlaps. Energy Leech support is a bit strange, but it's really nice damage when you're leeching Energy Shield, which you should almost always be doing when you're in combat or after popping Vol RF on a boss. If you don't like this support, then Hypothermia is also an option, or if you're really struggling for Frenzies, you could use Ice Bite support. To convert to cold, we're using the passive tree, a glove craft, and the hatred conversion mod on Watcher's Eye. You could probably get away with not using the Watcher's Eye, especially with a veiled glove mod, but then you'd be vulnerable to physical reflect, and we aren't really getting the full value then from any of the cold or elemental damage scaling. For movement, Flame Dash is linked to Second Wind and level 7 Arcane Surge. Keep Arcane Surge low level so you can proc the damage buff with every single use of Flame Dash. On left click, I'm using Vortex supported by Bone Chill, which makes enemies caught in the Vortex take increased cold damage. If you're feeling squishy, then switching the Vortex on left click to Steel Skin might be a good idea. Also, Frost Shield is pretty darn nice for ultimatums. Also, Vol Righteous Fire is pretty good for boss burst damage. Note that that activating Vol RF will nearly kill you, but never actually kill you. So make sure that you life flask right after using the skill, and try not to use it when you would be getting hit. For auras, we're using Hatred, Herald of Purity, Vitality, Petrified Blood, and Precision. Petrified Blood allows us to go on low life all of the time without having to hard scale Energy Shield for defenses. I'm reserving Vitality and Herald of Purity on life because Circle of Guilt is reducing my reservation cost. If you don't have the Circle of Guilt, you have to keep your Vitality low level. Precision Aura does help out with capping your crit chance, but it's not really all that important. I'm also using a Wave of Conviction, Awakened Hex Touch, Frostbite, Elemental Weakness setup. This is really great because this allows us to apply one additional curse, where we normally would only be able to apply one without having to get +1 curse on our gear anywhere. Note that if you're using this, you cannot have curse on hit on your rings or on your gloves, as this will mess it up completely. Hitting an enemy with this setup will reduce its resistance by like 100+, so it's a large damage boost, but you probably only need it for bosses. If you've never played a Petrified Blood build, it can be a little strange at first, but as long as you have Life Leech, your recovery should feel pretty good. Picking up Pain Attunement for an extra 30% more damage is really nice, because it's basically like playing on a 7-link. Cinder Swallow also does a great job of refilling your energy shield as you roll through maps, which is a nice defensive layer. We are extra vulnerable though to damage over time, so the more chaos res you can get, the better. For Pantheons, we're using Solaris and Shikari, but Ericali is good as well. I killed all the bandits for more passives, but helping Alira can be solid as well, as getting resistances on your gear can be a little bit hard. We're using 2 Void Batteries and the Badge of the Brotherhood to stack tons of power and frenzy charges for loads of damage. Luckily, these 2 items are drastically cheaper this league than the previous leagues, so this is a great time to try them out. Overall, we start with 3 power charges, pick up another from Assassin, all 3 from the passive tree, and then 2 more for our wands. This is a good start, but getting a hat like this is a huge damage buff for the 10th power charge, 1 more blood charge, and the additional Unleash seal. I think that Hubris Circlet is the best base for this build because we want to scale a bit of energy shield for another defensive layer, but note that Blizzard Crown would be a damage loss as we are doing all cold damage, so don't use this. We're using Herald of Purity for the physical damage scaling, and Circle of Guilt rings are a great way to scale that damage up. Since we're converting physical damage to cold, all of this physical scaling does a lot for our base damage. Herald buff effect and physical damage mods are really nice here, and if you're going real big budget, you can even grab ones that have +1 maximum power charges. Other great implicits are damage mods or resists, and you can even get elemental damage leeches life, which is a great mod because it frees you up from needing life leech on a cluster. I'm using 2 large cold clusters in my setup with Blanketed Snow, Vengeful Commander, Doriani's Lesson, Widespread Destruction, and Prismatic Heart. Blanketed Snow is the best damage mod for single target, and Doriani's is mandatory for life leech if you don't have it elsewhere. You could pick up Blast Freeze if you're looking to freeze more enemies, but with the large AoE that we're already covering, you're hitting almost everything anyways. Prismatic Heart can really round out your resistances if you're having trouble there. For mediums, I went with 2 area clusters just to get some more AoE and to sneak in some extra life with Towering Threat. For all your clusters, look to fit in some resistance and strength on the small nodes, and that's because we kind of need a lot of strength coming from our jewels in this build. My helmet is a Hubris Circlet with the Blood Charge enchant that I awakened +1 maximum power charge and +1 unleash seals. I got kind of lucky by landing fizz damage taken from hits as cold damage, but life would have been just fine. I filled in some of the resist on the suffix, but honestly this craft could have gone so much better. I've tried to make a better version, but I've been rather unlucky so far. I can't stress though that a hat here is going to add a lot of damage. An additional power charge is really huge, and the additional blood charge is really nice for single target. I'm using a rare chest that I made by awakening elevated frenzy charge on hit and elevated max res. I knew that I wanted some resistances on my body armor and frenzy charge on hit, so I figured this was the safest way. I got lucky with a decent life roll and unveiled elemental ailment and stun avoidance. Note that if you're not using a frenzy charge on hit chest, you're going to need some other way to generate frenzies. The best way that I found before was combining cast when damage taken cold snap with the green nightmare jewel in one of these two spots. This will allow you to get frenzy charges on kill, but you'll most likely not have frenzy charges for a lot of bosses, which is going to feel pretty bad. Just a friendly reminder that every single frenzy charge will give you a lot of cast speed and 4% more damage. So if you have the capability of getting 10 frenzy charges and you're not getting them, you're basically missing 40% more damage in your build. So getting a frenzy charge on hit chest should be somewhat of a priority for you. For boots, I'm using rare boots that have shapers avoid ailments, res, life, and movement speed. The avoid ailments isn't mandatory, but as you'll see in a little bit, it's really nice to have. For belt, I've chosen a Darkness Enthroned. It allows us to pick up 2 good hypnotic jewels for life, crit multi, and some other good stats. I needed strength on one of my jewels, and you want to make sure you have at least some flat fire damage so that you can ignite enemies for Cinder Swallow Urn. I got one with the enchant that gives us a chance to avoid ailments while elusive. Since I have avoid ailments on my belt, boots, body armor, and here on the passive tree, I am ailment immune when I am elusive, which is basically whenever I'm hitting enemies. If you don't have the belt enchant, you can just grab these 2 additional life nodes and that should bring you up to 100%. For other jewels, we're looking at life, crit multi, and then either some more damage or resistances, maybe even strength. Flasks, I recommend a Panic Divine Life Flask of Staunching. This should full heal you instantaneously. Cinder Swallow is really great, and with the Avoid Stun mod can prevent a lot of stuns, especially if you have the Avoid Stun and Ailments mod on your body armor. Taste of Hate adds some damage and defenses. Bottled Faith is a no-brainer for a crit-based build, and a Quicksilver Flask of Warding will get rid of those pesky curses. If you're looking for a slightly more defensive option, you can drop Quicksilver in favor of Stibonite. If you don't have a Bottled Faith or just have low base crit, you'll likely want to use a Diamond Flask. For ultimatum mods, I would recommend Restless Ground, Ruin, and Razor Dance. Other good mods are Limited Arena, buffs expire faster, escalating monster speed, hindering flasks, ailment and curse reflection, and lightning damage from mana cost. Just remember that our Reap doesn't cost any mana, therefore we're not taking any lightning damage from that mod. I would strongly recommend you avoid taking Lessened Reach as it hurts our AoE, Unlucky Criticals because we're a crit based build, Limited Flasks because our flasks are really nice, and less cooldown recovery. The less cooldown recovery, oddly enough, makes your seals recover slower, even though adding reduced cooldown duration does not make your seals recover faster. For map mods, I'd avoid Elemental Reflect, Unlucky Dodge, avoid Elemental Ailments, and Minus Max. These last 3 can make a map extra rippy, and it's easy to just roll over them. I can't tell you how many times I've attacked a pack of porcupines and not realized I'm in an avoid elemental ailments map and have them all shoot out at me. It's not fun. So I would highly recommend just roll right over that. For leveling, I would recommend a Sanguinate into Reap. Once you have Reap, Spell Cascade, and Unleash at level 38, the build feels pretty solid. If you want to see me leveling like this, check out the VOD from Don vs. Stream. I've included some leveling trees in the POB and check the notes section for a lot of gearing tips and searches. I hope you enjoyed the build. It's been a blast for me, but it's probably time to move on. I'm kind of stuck between Hate Forge and Righteous Fire though, so who knows what's next. If you like the content, do the things because it helps the algorithm, and come by the stream.